Chapter 3678. Twins. It was already hard enough for a woman to bear one child. But now, Master was pregnant with two. They couldn't imagine how hard it was for a mother to bear two children. Don't worry. Listen to me first. Fan Lin signaled for everyone to be quiet. He glanced at them and said, "It's not impossible to have twins, but it's rare. It's not scary to have twins. As long as you take good care of them, there won't be any danger. However, this is Master's first child. We have to be careful." He thought for a while and looked at Qin Axan, saying, "From tomorrow onwards, you will learn some medical skills from me. When Master gives birth, you can help her." Qin Axan replied, "Okay. Qingqing, we have to adjust Master's diet. After we get out of here and find a place to settle down, I'll adjust the diet again." Fan Lin looked at Bai Qingqing and said. Bai Qingqing also responded. "Prepare the midwife first. Don't worry too much. Just take care of Master as usual." After explaining to everyone, he dismissed them. He wanted to see Master, but he thought that Master might have fallen asleep, so he gave up. After about half a month in the savage wilderness, they finally got out of this place. When they got out of the forest behind them, they looked back. It was still the mysterious forest with layers of mountains. After the group of people arrived outside, they put away the airship and used the spirit deer carriage to travel. They traveled all the way until they arrived at a small town in the evening. Most of the people in this remote town were local people. There were also some mercenaries and individual cultivators who passed by to rest. Therefore, when Fingzhou's spirit deer carriage slowly entered the town, almost everyone's eyes fell on the purple gold spirit deer carriage and the handsome men and beautiful women around it. "What carriage is this? Is that a deer? What carriage? That's a spirit deer. But these two spirit deer are so special. I've never seen this breed before. Look at the antlers, they're so beautiful. Hey, the woman sitting in the carriage is also beautiful. Look at her face and her figure. TSK, she's really good. Sun Lao San, you better put away that perverted look of yours. These people are not ordinary people. How dare you show your lecherous look to them? Aren't you afraid of getting into trouble?" Hearing this, the man glanced at the spirit deer carriage again. Indeed, as the old man said, none of these people were ordinary people. He didn't dare to stare at the women and just took a big bite of the flatbread. TSK. Sun Lao San, what kind of women? Women are all like that. He snorted and turned. Knowing fear is a good thing, not knowing fear is a bad thing. The old man smoked his hookah, glanced at the laughing man, then glanced at the spirit deer carriage, and whispered, looking at this style, "I guess they are also from a big family. We can't afford to offend them, so we have to hide." Wei Feng and Luo Yu, who went to scout ahead, returned not long later. They came to the side of the spirit deer carriage and said, "Master, we've booked the inn ahead. Let's rest here tonight." Chapter 3679. The spirit deer carriage stopped in front of the inn. Wei Feng, Du Fan, and the others stood on the left and right. From the moment they got off the carriage in Fengzhou to the moment they entered the inn, the surrounding people only saw a red figure. Seeing those people enter the inn and the spirit deer carriage stop outside, many people whispered, "Hey, look at those two deer. What kind of deer are they? Why are they purple gold? Didn't I say I've never seen this kind of deer?" The old man took a puff of his water pipe and glanced at the person who spoke. "In any case, it's a spirit deer. At most, we'll see some cultivators or sect disciples passing by in this small town. It's extremely rare to see people with such grandeur. I really wonder who they are. Who knows? In any case, they're different from us." "How are they different? Could it be that they have 3 heads and 6 arms? Don't they all have the same eyes, nose, and mouth? Another person snorted and felt there was nothing different. In any case, there were people on the left and right. The old man, taking a puff of his water pipe, narrowed his eyes and smiled as he glanced at that person and said, "They don't have 3 heads and 6 arms. However, with a single glance, you can tell they're not ordinary. So what if they have the same eyes, nose, and mouth? This is called different people having different lives." After being choked like this, the man didn't say anything. Just as he withdrew his gaze, he saw another group of people enter the small town. Looking at the men and women wearing the same robes, he pulled on the old man's clothes. "Hey, old man, look, another group has come. This group doesn't look like they're from a noble family, right?" The old man, taking a puff of his water pipe, turned around and glanced at the robes of those people with narrowed eyes. Then, he withdrew his gaze and fiddled with his water pipe. "You don't believe me when I say you haven't seen the world. These people aren't from a noble family, but the robes they're wearing are from a sect. It seems like they're disciples from a sect." Sect disciples. The man's eyes lit up and he hurriedly asked, "Which sect's disciples are they from?" "You're asking me, but who am I supposed to ask?" The old man slapped his hand away. "Go, go, go. Don't keep pestering this old man. I don't have time to talk to you." The man watched the group enter the city and walked towards the inn. However, the town was not big and there were only 1 or 2 inns. Now that one of the inns was full and the other had been booked, these people would not be able to stay in the inn. "Hey, old man, do you think these people will stay in a homestay? Of the 2 inns, one is full, and the other is reserved. I guess they can only stay in the guest house. Haha, I'll go and ask. Maybe I can make some money," the man said. He didn't wait for the old man to speak, and ran towards the people in front of him. "Uncle Master, this inn is already full." A man wearing a sect's white robe walked back to the group and said to the older middle-aged man, Marshal uncle, look at what that is." A woman pointed at the spirit beast carriage at the entrance of the inn not far away. Previously, they had only seen the carriage and had not seen the spirit beasts in front. Now that they had come here, they saw that the spirit beasts in front of the carriage were actually 2 extremely beautiful spirit deer. Chapter 3680. The middle-aged man looked in the direction the disciple pointed. He saw that the inn was blocked by the spirit beast carriage, so he couldn't see the sign of the inn. However, there was no doubt that it was an inn. As for the spirit beast carriage at the entrance, there were 2 purplish gold spirit deer. When he saw the 2 spirit deer, his eyes flashed, and an extremely fast light flashed in his eyes. These were purple gold spirit deer. The extremely rare purple gold spirit deer. The purple gold spirit deer was a treasure, but such a rare purple gold spirit deer was being used as a spirit beast to pull a carriage. What a waste. He. A man rubbed his hands together and bowed with a smile on his face as he walked in front of these people. He looked at these white-robed sect disciples and tried his best to show a friendly smile. However, before he could speak, a disciple reprimanded him. "What are you doing?" With a shout, he raised the sword in his hand and held it in front of the man, not allowing him to come any closer. Don't misunderstand. The man waved his hand and smiled. "It's like this. I wanted to ask if the immortals would like to stay at my place for the night. My house has an empty courtyard across from here. It's very close and the courtyard is quite big. It's enough for you guys to stay." The middle-aged man frowned and calmly said, "No need." Seeing that they were all looking at the inn not far away, the man rubbed his hands and smiled. "Immortal, you don't need to look at that inn. It has already been booked by someone else. Our town isn't big and there are only 2 inns. If you guys don't stay at the inn, you'll have to sleep on the streets tonight." Hearing this, the middle-aged man frowned and glanced at him. Without saying anything, He waved his sleeves and led everyone to the inn in front. "Hey, immortal, do you want to stay at my house? My house is much cheaper than staying at the inn." The man was still shouting, but they didn't even look back. He couldn't help but spit on the ground. He waved his sleeve and muttered, "Let's see where you guys will stay tonight. If you come to my house again, the price will be much higher than before. These spirit deer are really beautiful." A female disciple saw the two spirit deer and couldn't help but reach out to touch them. However, before her hand could touch the spirit deer, she was bounced back by a force. "Ah!" the female disciple exclaimed and took a few steps back. Fortunately, she was supported by the disciple behind her. "Be careful." The male disciple supported the woman. After she stood up, he looked ahead and couldn't help but be surprised. There's a barrier around the spirit deer carriage, and it's an invisible barrier. If they hadn't touched it, they wouldn't have felt the existence of the spirit deer chariot. Obviously, the person who set up the spirit deer chariot didn't want anyone to touch it, so he set up the spirit deer chariot. However, what kind of strength did he have to be able to set up such an invisible spirit deer chariot? "Martial uncle, who are the people in there?" "In our sect, if it's not a peak master or above, I'm afraid it can't be used, right?" a man asked in a low voice. He was very curious about the people living in the inn. Seeing this, the middle-aged man looked a little more dignified. He nodded and said, "Yes, ordinary people can't set up such an invisible barrier." Chapter 3681. However, they did not expect that they would not even be able to enter the inn. "Senior immortals, the inn has been booked. The guests inside have instructed that outsiders are not allowed to enter," the two waiters said apologetically. The two waiters stood by the door apologetically. When they saw them standing outside the door for so long, they were already on standby. It was not to serve them, but to prevent them from entering. After all, the guests inside gave them quite a lot of tips, so they had to do their jobs well. "We're from the Soaring Firmament Celestial Sect. Go and inform the guests inside that we'd like to discuss with them if they can give us a few rooms," the middle-aged man said confidently. In his opinion, as long as he mentioned the name of the Soaring Firmament Celestial Sect, even if the other party was a noble family, they would not dare to be too rude to them. Moreover, they would not be able to stay in the entire inn. However, after hearing his words, the two waiters still stood there with a troubled expression and refused to budge. "Senior Immortal, the guests inside said that they don't like to be disturbed. No one is allowed to enter." Hearing this, the middle-aged man's face darkened. Before he could speak, the two male disciples beside him snorted coldly, "Who's so arrogant? No one was allowed to come in. We're going to go in. What can they do to us?" As soon as the voice fell, the two men pushed aside the two waiters who were blocking the door and strode over the threshold. However, before they could even touch the ground of the inn, the two of them were sent flying by a force. "Ah! Ah!" Two cries of surprise rang out as the two figures were sent flying. They did not even have time to react before they fell heavily on the street outside. Third senior brother. Seventh junior brother. Everyone was shocked and hurriedly went forward to help the two of them up. "How are you? Are you hurt?" The two of them were caught off guard and were sent flying. They were not seriously injured, but after receiving that blow, it was as if a breath of air was pressed on their chests. They could not catch their breath for a long time. They patted their chests, took a deep breath, and exhaled heavily. Only then did they feel as if they had come back to life. However, when the two of them recovered, their faces were flushed red with anger. Ever since they entered the immortal sect, who didn't treat them with respect? Even before they entered the immortal sect, they were disciples of aristocratic families. When had they ever been humiliated like this? At this moment, they did not think that if they had not tried to force their way in, how could they have been sent flying? Who's there? Come out. The two of them shouted angrily. They pushed away the people who were supporting them and strode forward. However, before they could enter, they heard a casual voice coming from inside. If you don't want to fall again, I advise you not to step in. Du Fan was fanning himself with a fan in his hand as he leisurely walked down the stairs from the second floor. When the two men saw that the person who came down was a man who looked about the same age as them, they couldn't help but get angry. They shouted sternly, "Did you do it?" Chapter 3682. The waiter came back to his senses and quickly said, "I'll go to the kitchen right away." With that, he left one of them in front while the other quickly went to the kitchen at the back. The innkeeper noticed that the atmosphere in the inn seemed to be at daggers drawn and could not help but gulp nervously. Those people were from the sect and the guests in the inn seemed to have extraordinary backgrounds as well. It would be best if both parties did not start a fight. Otherwise, he was afraid that he would not be able to keep his inn. Seeing that they were being ignored, the two disciples from the sect could not help but clench their fists. Just as they were about to step forward, they were stopped by their uncle master. The middle-aged man raised his hand to stop the two who were about to enter. At the same time, he shot them a warning glance. After seeing that they had lowered their heads and retreated unwillingly, he then looked at the man who was sitting inside with his legs crossed and gently fanning himself with a fan. He smiled and cupped his fists as he asked, "How should I address you, sir?" Du Fan did not look at him. Instead, he called out to the waiter who was waiting by the side, "Waiter, bring a jug of wine and a few side dishes." "Yes, yes." The waiter quickly responded and quickly went to get the wine. He then went into the kitchen and brought 2 side dishes to go with the wine. Just then, Bai Qingqing walked down from upstairs. She was dressed in white and her aura was outstanding. Born in a prestigious family, she already had an extraordinary aura. On top of that, her alluring beauty caused the disciples from the sect to be stunned by her beauty as she slowly walked down the stairs. When the female disciples saw this, jealousy flashed across their eyes. They bit their lower lips and stared coldly at the beautiful woman in white. They were all dressed in white and they already thought that they were extraordinary. However, when they were compared to her, they were actually inferior. How could they accept this? "Why have you come down?" Du Fan looked at Bai Qingqing. "I came down to see if the dishes are ready." As she spoke, she merely glanced at those people indifferently and walked towards the kitchen. Not long after, she carried a tray with a few dishes that had just been cooked and went upstairs. "I wanted to sleep before getting up to eat, but since the food is ready, let's eat before sleeping." Luo Yu and Wei Feng walked out of the room, and the two of them chatted as they walked. When they arrived at Du Fan's table and sat down, they glanced at the people standing outside the door and asked, "What are those people standing there for?" "Who knows? I don't even know them," Du Fan said casually. He poured himself a glass of wine, took a sip, and ate a side dish. Even the middle-aged man's expression darkened when he was ignored. He looked deeply at Du Fan and the others before he pursed his lips and said, "You're so arrogant that even the members of my high firmament celestial sect can't enter your eyes. I'm sure you're from a great sect." The middle-aged man still didn't speak and didn't even spare a glance at them. The middle-aged man immediately narrowed his eyes and said, "I'm untalented, but I'd like to seek guidance from you." As soon as he finished speaking, something seemed to have assaulted Du Fan with a swish. Du Fan originally intended to eat the side dish, yet unexpectedly, the person standing outside the door actually shot something at him. He immediately moved his hand and grabbed the thing that assaulted him with his chopsticks. Chapter 3683. The innkeeper, who had been sitting behind the counter, saw the jade token and felt his legs go soft. He glanced at the middle-aged man and quickly said to Du Fan, "Young master, this is a challenge token. It's for a challenge." "Oh. Challenge token." Du Fan looked at the plate in surprise, then looked at the middle-aged man. He raised his eyebrows and smiled. You want to challenge me? That's right. The middle-aged man stood with his hands behind his back. He looked confident. But I don't have time to play with you. As Du Fan spoke, he flung the chopsticks that were holding the jade tablet towards the middle-aged man. His speed was so fast that the middle-aged man could not help but take a step back before he could catch the jade tablet. As he held the jade token in his hand, the force from the blow caused his palm to go numb. The pain caused sweat to seep out of his forehead. However, his hand still tightly held onto the jade token and did not loosen his grip. His eyes were also staring intently at Du Fan. How dare you! The two male disciples standing next to the middle-aged man shouted. They were ready to draw their swords. Back down! The middle-aged man shouted and looked at the two disciples warningly. Then, he looked at Du Fan. I'm Zhou Qingxiong from the High Firmament Celestial Sect. You don't even dare to tell me your name. Du Fan waved his fan and smiled. It's not that I don't dare to tell you my name, but you don't deserve to know my name. Hearing these arrogant words, the middle-aged man clenched his fists and sneered, Good. I'll take my leave first. If there's a chance in the future, I'll be sure to ask you for advice. Let's go. He turned around and left. Anger rose in his heart. When he passed by the purple gold spirit deer carriage, he glanced at the two purple gold spirit deer carriages and a dark light flashed in his eyes. He, Zhou Qingxiong, was going to take revenge for this humiliation. People from the High Firmament Celestial Sect. That's all there is to it. Luo Yu shook his head, retracted his gaze, and ignored him. Instead, he ate the side dishes and said with a smile, the side dishes of this inn are not bad. Yes, it's really not bad. Wei Feng sipped a mouthful of wine and picked up a mouthful of side dishes. Obviously, he didn't take those people from the Soaring Firmament Immortal Sect seriously. Du Fan looked at the two of them and asked, Where are they? Aren't you coming down to eat? Fan Lin is teaching Qin Xin. Seeing how busy they are, I don't think they will come down to eat. The others seem to be lying down. I saw Hui Lang in the backyard just now, but I don't see him coming. Lang Hua and Lang Shuang are with Master. I think they will come down to eat later. Wei Feng took another sip of wine as he spoke, and then he said to the attendant, Give me 2 more dishes and rice. Do you have any meat? Cut another plate of meat and bring it up. Okay. The attendant replied. His original worry had been put down after those people from the Immortal Sect left. At this moment, he had a smile on his face as he turned around and went into the kitchen to take care of it. On the other side, those people from the Immortal Sect didn't have an inn to rest in the end, so they could only make do with residences. In the courtyard, all the disciples looked at their martial uncle who had a dark expression and couldn't help but look at each other. Martial uncle, are those people very formidable? Could it be that their strength is above martial uncle Zhou's? Otherwise, how could martial uncle Zhou endure such humiliation? Chapter 3684. His voice paused as his eyes flashed. However, I've already sent a message to the sect. Those 2 spirit deer are extremely rare violet gold spirit deer. I believe that the sect will send people over once they receive the news. Hearing this, everyone was slightly surprised and couldn't help but look at each other. One of them asked, Martial uncle, if those deer are really rare, why would those people use them to pull carriages? Zhou Qingxiong coldly snorted. They probably don't know about the purple gold spirit deer and think it's an ordinary spirit deer. Otherwise, who would use such a rare and precious purple gold spirit deer to pull carriages? A female disciple asked, Are the purple gold spirit deer very rare? Zhou Qingxiong rubbed his palms and said, The purple gold spirit deer eats gold coins and crystal stones. Ordinary people can't afford to feed them. Their whole body is a treasure, even their blood is a detoxification holy medicine. Moreover, the purple gold spirit deer is very fast, strong, and can fly. Although it is very suitable for pulling carriages, no one is willing to use it as a hearse. Even if there is one, it would be kept in captivity, unlike these people who are wasting natural resources. Okay, everyone go rest. He waved his hand and let everyone disperse. He also went into a room. At midnight, two figures arrived at the small town on flying swords. At this moment, the middle-aged man from the celestial sect, Zhou Qingxiong, was waiting in the dark and quiet town. When he saw the two figures arrive, he quickly went to greet them. Greetings, Martial Uncle Duan. Zhou Qingxiong was very respectful in front of the two and didn't dare to be presumptuous. The two got off the flying swords and the flying swords behind them disappeared. They looked at the small town before their eyes fell on Zhou Qingxiong. You said you found two purple gold spirit deer in the small town. Did you make a mistake? A middle-aged man in gray asked. Zhou Qingxiong quickly said, Master, disciple didn't make a mistake. They really are purple gold spirit deer. The man in white, who looked to be in his early 30s, smiled and said, This small town is so remote that there probably aren't many decent cultivators. How could there be a purple gold spirit deer here? Did you make a mistake? Martial Uncle Duan, it's really the purple gold spirit deer, and there are two of them. Look over there. He pointed at the entrance of the inn some distance away and said, The spirit beast carriage parked outside is being pulled by two purple gold spirit deer. Hearing this, the two of them frowned. The man in white glanced at Zhou Qingxiong and said with a dangerous tone, You hurriedly sent a message to your master and told us to rush here for the two violet gold spirit deer that already belonged to someone else. Seeing that he was angry, Zhou Qingxiong was startled and hurriedly said, Martial Uncle Duan, those people probably didn't know about the violet gold spirit deer. Otherwise, they wouldn't have used them to pull the carriage. I was thinking that if we could offer the two violet gold spirit deer to the sept, it would be a great merit, so the white-robed man narrowed his eyes and said in an unfriendly tone, We're the high firmament celestial sect, not a bandit nest. We don't even know if those two are purple gold spirit deer or not. Even if they are, why should they give them to our sect? Chapter 3685. Zhou Qingxiong's eyes flickered when he was questioned. He said, Martial Uncle Duan, we're from the immortal sect. Is it wrong to say that we're from the immortal sect when we're outside? The white-clothed man frowned and glanced at him. He was about to scold him again when the gray-robed man said, Junior brother, there's nothing wrong with saying that we're from the immortal sect. We still don't know if that's the violet gold spirit deer. Let's take a look first. The white-clothed man was stunned when he heard this. He looked at him and said, Senior brother, even if it's the violet gold spirit deer, it belongs to someone else. Even if we're from the immortal sect, we shouldn't covet something that belongs to someone else. That's beneath us. Junior brother, I know what you're saying. Let's go take a look and see if it's the violet gold spirit deer. He didn't wait for the gray-robed man to speak and walked forward. Seeing them walk forward, the white-robed man shook his head and followed. What they didn't know was that Du Fan and the others in the inn were already aware of their presence the moment they appeared. They had also heard everything they said. At this moment, Du Fan and the others were drinking wine in the closed door of the inn. Du Fan smiled and said, I told you. That person definitely won't let it go. See, I was right, right? The violet gold spirit deer is a rare creature. I'm surprised that someone is able to guard the moral line in their heart without knowing our strength and identity. Luo Yu took a sip of wine and narrowed his eyes. If it's a righteous sect, then they ought to not do something like coveting something that belongs to another. Unless it's a person of ill repute. Wei Feng spoke as well, and then he raised the wine jug and poured a cup for Hui Lang. Drink. I haven't seen you drink more than a few cups of wine all night. Hui Lang, I told you not to worry. The Yama Lord will wake up sooner or later. Even if you don't believe your master, you should believe my master. Luo Yu patted his shoulder and grinned. What do you mean your master is afraid of my master? Isn't your master my madam? Hui Lang glared at them. Ha ha ha, yes, I haven't changed my habit of speaking. We're all family, there's no such thing as your or my. I should be punished. Come, I'll punish myself with 3 cups of wine. Luo Yu laughed loudly and poured himself 3 cups of wine. They had set up a soundproof barrier around them, so they weren't afraid of disturbing their master's rest upstairs. They were able to hear the sounds outside because of their divine sense. However, their current strength was already at the level of a mid-deity. The few people outside were not as strong as them, so it was extremely difficult for them to detect their divine sense. I think you want to drink wine, so you're taking the opportunity to punish yourself, right? Wei Feng glanced at him with a spurious smile. Hee, isn't this master's collection of good wine? It's rare for me to have such leisure time, so I should drink a few more cups. Luo Yu grinned. The rich taste of the wine in his mouth was endless, making people unable to stop themselves. Speaking of which, the 9 profound heavens realm is almost sealed off. Because there's no monarch to govern it, there's no way to communicate with other realms. It's almost impossible to obtain news from other realms, Ling Hua said warmly. He didn't drink much and only took a sip. Chapter 3686. So what? Strength decides everything. I believe it won't be long before everyone in the 9 profound heavens realm knows Master's name. Ha ha ha. That's right. Come, let's drink. Everyone laughed, raised their cups, and downed the wine in one gulp. Outside, the Hui Lang man who was looking at the 2 purple gold spirit deer exclaimed in surprise, they're really purple gold spirit deer. And they're already adult purple gold spirit deer. Look at the deer's skin, antlers, and purple gold color. They're so beautiful. He couldn't help but reach out to touch them, but Zhou Qingxiong hurriedly pulled him back. Master, you can't. What's wrong? The gray-robed man looked back at him, puzzled. His eyes fell on the 2 purple gold spirit deer and said, I just want to touch the deer. I won't do anything to them. It was rare to see a real violet gold spirit deer appear in front of them, so they couldn't hide their joy at all. After all, they had only seen such rare animals in the past in the myriad beast ancient record. When had they ever seen a real violet gold spirit deer in front of them? Master, there's an invisible boundary around the purple gold spirit deer. If you touch it, you'll be bounced away. Zhou Qingxiong looked at his master, who was stunned, and said, previously, a disciple couldn't help but want to touch it, but he was bounced away by the boundary. Hearing this, the white-robed man frowned, invisible boundary. Really? Yes, I saw it with my own eyes. Zhou Qingxiong said. Hearing this, the gray-robed man and the white-robed man were surprised. The gray-robed man pondered for a while and said, if it's really an invisible boundary, then these people should be very strong. Yes, if he didn't say there was an invisible boundary here, I wouldn't have noticed it. The white-robed man said with a serious face, Senior brother, the owner of the purple gold spirit deer is not an ordinary person. Even though we're from the celestial sect, I think it's better not to provoke them. It was rare to see a purple gold spirit deer, so the gray-robed man didn't want to give up. He looked at the white-robed man and said, Junior brother, you're wrong. Do you think we're afraid of them? Besides, we didn't say we were going to provoke them, but since we've met, we should pay them a visit. Hearing this, the white-clothed man's face turned serious. He looked at the brightly lit inn and didn't say anything. Master, are we going to knock on the door now? Or tomorrow morning? Zhou Qingxiong asked. They should be asleep by now. Since it's a visit, it can't be at night. The gray-robed man said and looked at Zhou Qingxiong. Where are you staying? Zhou Qingxiong's head, all right, then let's go and rest first. Keep an eye on them. Tomorrow morning, we'll pay them a visit so that they won't leave without knowing. The gray-robed man instructed. Yes, disciple understands. Zhou Qingxiong responded and took them to a house not far away to rest. Chapter 3687. Fengjiu did not know about this. Even if she knew, she would not care. After all, she was now focused on nursing her body, nurturing her fetus, and cultivating. That night, she slept very well. She slept all the way until dawn, when she called Leng Shuang in. After a simple wash, she sat down at the table and said, "Just bring the breakfast here." "Okay," Ling Shuang replied and turned to leave. Although her breakfast was prepared by the kitchen staff, they also instructed how to prepare it and added the ingredients according to Fan Lin's arrangements. When the food was brought to Fengjiu, it was also checked by Ling Shuang. After all, he was worried that the people in the inn would do something to it. Fengjiu did not know that at this moment, the people from the Lingxiao celestial sect came again. This time, when they arrived at the inn, the gray-robed middle-aged man was in the lead. Zhou Qingxiong followed beside him. "May I know where the master is? We have some things to discuss with him." As the gray-robed man spoke, he looked at the men drinking tea inside and glanced at them, guessing which one was their master. However, he could not help but feel a little puzzled when he saw that these people were extremely outstanding in appearance and temperament. They did not look like ordinary guards in attendance, but more like young masters of aristocratic families. "You're talking about them." These people did not look like guards in attendance. Zhou Qingxiong stepped forward and said in a low voice, "Yes, these people should be the underlings. However, I have never seen their master, so I don't know who their master is. However, these people are very strong, especially the one with the fan in his hand. These people were very outstanding. Just a glance was enough to make people remember them." However, if he had to say who among these people left the deepest impression, it would be the man with the fan in his hand. Last night, the challenge token that was bounced back by him caused his hand to ache for most of the night. However, so what? Now that his master was here, and Marshal Uncle Duan was also here, would they still dare to be so arrogant? According to him, the one with the fan in his hand was very powerful. The middle-aged man couldn't help but look at him. He carefully sized him up, but he couldn't see through his strength. Just as the middle-aged man was about to lead the disciples behind him in, two waiters apologetically stepped forward and stopped them. "Immortal elders, this inn has already been booked by them, and they also said that they don't want anyone to disturb them, you see." Seeing that he was stopped, the middle-aged man frowned slightly. He did not look at the waiter but looked at Du Fan instead. "Where is the owner? We came here with sincerity. Is this how you treat your guests?" The oppressive voice spread out and naturally reached the ears of Fengjiu, who was eating breakfast upstairs. Hearing the noise downstairs, Fengjiu wiped the corners of his mouth and asked, "What's going on downstairs?" Hearing this, Leng Hua and Leng Shuang looked at each other. Leng Hua then said, "Master, the people downstairs are from the High Firmament Immortal sect. Last night, Leng Hua briefly told her about how they wanted to enter the inn and almost fought with Du Fan last night. He then said, last night, 2 more people came, and this morning, they came again. They probably took a fancy to the purple gold spirit deer." Chapter 3688. Downstairs. "We don't know you. Why do you think you can meet our master just because you want to?" Wei Feng glanced at them like a hedonistic son of a rich family. "Go back to where you came from. Unrelated people shouldn't disturb us," Luo Yu said casually. He picked up the peanuts on the table and tossed one into his mouth. Du Fan sat there with a smile. He fanned himself with the fan in his hand and did not speak. "We are from the Soaring Firmament Celestial sect. We would like to visit the master. Please inform us," the middle-aged man said in a deep voice. He did not argue with them. However, Du Fan and the others did not buy it at all. So what if you're from the Soaring Firmament Celestial sect? We don't know you, and my master doesn't like trouble. He doesn't have the time to meet you. It was the first time he had encountered people who did not care about the Soaring Firmament Celestial sect at all. Even the middle-aged man could not help but narrow his eyes at this moment. His face darkened. He looked at them, cupped his hands, and asked, "Then, may I ask which sect you're from? Or which clan you're from? What does it have to do with you which sect or clan I'm from?" Du Fan said with a smile, but his words were not polite at all. Seeing that these people were not moved by force or persuasion and were choking them as soon as he opened his mouth, the pressure on the middle-aged man's body spread out because of his anger. However, at this moment, a hand landed on the middle-aged man's shoulder. "Senior brother." A white-clothed man walked up from behind and placed his hand on the middle-aged man's shoulder. He secretly exerted force in his palm and made the middle-aged man withdraw his pressure. When the middle-aged man saw him, he took a deep breath and said, "Didn't you say you weren't coming? Why are you here again?" The white-clothed man sighed helplessly and said, "If I didn't come, did you want to fight with them?" "Why would I? I just want to see what these people are capable of," the middle-aged man said in a deep voice. He looked at the people inside and then his gaze fell on Du Fan. He said, "Do you dare to accept my challenge?" Du Fan waved his fan lightly and said with a smile, "I don't even know who you are, so why should I accept your challenge?" "Humph. I think you don't dare." The middle-aged man snorted with disdain. "Yes, I wouldn't dare," Du Fan said with a smile. However, there was no trace of fear in his eyes. A wise man could tell that he was just brushing him off. The middle-aged man was annoyed. He flipped his palm and attacked Du Fan fiercely. His movements were so fast that the man in white beside him couldn't stop him in time. "Senior brother." The white-robed man was shocked, but in the end, he could not stop it. He only felt that when his senior brother struck out with that palm strike, a faint sense of unease rose in his heart. According to his observation, these people were all unfathomable. Moreover, after knowing that they were from the High Firmament Celestial sect, they still didn't put them in their eyes. It could be seen that they were not ordinary people. Who was the other party? It was not a wise move to make a move without knowing his background. Seeing the man's palm strike coming at him, Du Fan still had a smile on his face. However, he narrowed his eyes and waved the fan in his hand. A wind blade attacked the man's palm strike. The wind blade flew through the air and directly attacked the middle-aged man. Seeing the sharp wind blade, the white-robed man's heart sank. He shouted in a low voice, "Everyone, get out of the way." Chapter 3689. "Aw!" Cries of surprise could be heard. The white-robed man suddenly turned his head to take a look. When he saw this, he could not help but be slightly startled. He saw that although the disciples who had quickly retreated had already retreated a few meters away, the front of their robes had still been cut open by the chi blade. It was fine for the male disciples, but even the front of the female disciples' robes had been cut open, revealing their undergarments. The female disciples cried out in surprise. Their faces flushed red as they hurriedly covered their chests with their hands. The male disciples were caught off guard by this attack and were shocked. When they turned their heads, they saw that the front of their senior or junior sisters' robes had been cut open, revealing their undergarments of different colors. For a moment, they were stunned. After quickly averting their eyes, they took out cloaks and covered them with them, quickly put them on. Seeing the chaos behind him, the white-robed man furrowed his brows and sighed silently. He looked at the man holding the fan who had a leisurely expression and said, "Even if my senior brother was in the wrong, your actions have gone too far." If he had not pulled his senior brother away in time, the injuries caused by this attack would not have been light. Du Fan chuckled, "What's wrong? Only you are allowed to attack." You don't allow us to retaliate. Or, did I allow you to provoke us? Faced with this, the white-robed man was speechless for a long time. Junior brother, move aside. This brat has no respect for anyone. Today, I must teach him a good lesson. The gray-robed man said in a deep voice. His face was dark and his eyes were filled with anger. Under his sleeves, his fists were tightly clenched. Before Du Fan and the others could speak, a light and unhurried voice could be heard. Oh. Who are you? What right do you have to teach my people a lesson? Hearing this voice, Du Fan and the others who were originally sitting stood up. They raised their heads and looked towards the stairs. Without prior agreement, they called out, Master. The people outside the inn looked at the woman who was slowly walking down. Their eyes could not help but flicker slightly. The woman was dressed in red, and her steps were slow and elegant as she walked down the stairs with one hand. Her movements were languid and casual, and her noble aura was impossible to ignore. Looking up, that peerlessly beautiful face revealed a soul-stirring beauty. Her expression was indifferent, her eyes were cold, and the corners of her lips were slightly curled. It was a smile that was not a smile, but it caused everyone to be dumbfounded and shocked. Master, did I disturb you? Du Fan asked. When he glanced outside, his gaze became colder. With all the commotion downstairs, it's hard not to disturb me. Fengjiu went downstairs and casually sat down at the table. She propped up her chin with one hand and looked outside with her clear eyes. Her gaze swept past the gray-robed man and landed on Du Fan. She said, Moreover, didn't I hear that someone wanted to help me teach you a lesson? Seeing that it was getting late, I decided to come down and take a look. The cultivation world was filled with beauties, not to mention Duan Yunhe who was in the immortal sect. He had seen many extremely beautiful women. However, when he saw this woman dressed in red, he felt that those so-called beauties that he had seen in the past could not compare to her in the slightest. Her movements were languid and casual, natural and unrestrained. The noble aura around her seemed to have been formed from the heavens. He had never seen such an elegant, languid, willful, natural and noble woman in the past 100 years. Chapter 3690. Perhaps Fengjiu was annoyed by the astonished gazes of the people outside, but he frowned slightly and said in a clear and cold voice, Du Fan. Yes, master. Du Fan responded and glanced at her. In the next moment, his figure shot out and the fan in his hand shot out a wind blade, startling the people outside. The white-robed man suddenly regained his senses and realized that he had lost his composure. However, before he could react, a wind blade had already shot toward him. This time, he did not ask the crowd to avoid it. Instead, he met it head-on. He rotated his hands in front of him and a wave of energy instantly spread out, dispersing the wind blade that was coming toward him. At the same time, he raised his hands and pushed the disciples standing behind him to the side. Some of them staggered a few meters away. When Du Fan's figure shot forward, Leng Hua and Leng Shuang stood beside Fengjiu. They had to prevent the airflow during the battle from injuring their master, so they had to be cautious at all times. Duan Yunhe did not want to fight Du Fan. As he quickly retreated, he said, Wait, we did not mean to offend you. We didn't. However, before he could finish his sentence, he was interrupted by a stern shout. What an arrogant brat. Do you really think that there's no one in the soaring firmament celestial sect? Watch how I teach you a lesson. The gray-robed man shouted in a low voice. His face was filled with anger. In the next moment, he raised his hand and a sharp sword imbued with sword energy shot toward Du Fan. As a peak master of the celestial sect, when had he ever suffered such humiliation? When he saw Du Fan make a move, he wanted to teach this arrogant brat a lesson. Humph. He had thought that their master would be a man. Who would have thought that she would be a woman? Since she was a woman, he would not fight her. Instead, he would teach this brat a lesson and make him remember. Senior brother. Duan Yunhe was anxious. He saw that his senior brother had already started fighting with the fan-wielding man. Spiritual chi surged from their bodies and pressure spread out from their bodies. Duan Yunhe watched as his senior brother went from teaching the man a lesson to retreating step by step due to shame and anger. His sword was filled with killing intent unknowingly. Every move was swift and fierce, as if he wanted to kill his opponent. Duan Yunhe was shocked. Whoosh! Brat! Watch my sword! The swift and fierce sword chi contained killing intent as it attacked. Its speed was so fast that even though Du Fan's cultivation was above his, he was still somewhat unable to deal with the opponent's shadowless speed. Du Fan quickly retreated, avoiding the sword chi coming at him. He found that he couldn't see his opponent's moves at all. His opponent's sword was changing so fast that he could only barely block the attack with the fan in his hand. Whoosh! 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 Senior brother. Quickly stop. Duan Yunhe could not help but turn pale with fright when he saw that his senior brother had even used his famous shadowless chain sword. If he really killed his opponent, he would be in deep trouble. Master, that person's sword technique is very strange. The speed of his sword is extremely fast. Even I cannot see through his moves. At the side, Luo Yu frowned as he watched Du Fan retreat step by step. He could clearly see that in terms of martial skills, the middle-aged man was superior. And in terms of strength and cultivation, Du Fan had not released all of his pressure. Chapter 3691. Fengjiu propped up her chin with one hand as she lazily watched the scene unfold outside. The middle-aged man's sword was truly fast and his swordsmanship was exquisite. She hadn't been able to see through his swordsmanship in the beginning, but after fighting with Du Fan until now, she had figured out how to break through his swordsmanship. Her lips curled into a faint smile as she locked onto Du Fan with her divine sense. At the same time, she transmitted her voice into his ears. Du Fan was being forced back step by step by the middle-aged man's sword, but at that moment, his master's voice rang out in his mind. His eyes flashed when he heard those words, and in the next moment, he switched from defense to offense. He took the initiative to attack, and instead of retreating step by step, he used swift and fierce moves to suppress his opponent, making it impossible for his opponent to use his sword. Duan Yunhe, who was watching from the side, was secretly shocked when he saw his senior brother being suppressed in an instant. Moreover, the man called Du Fan's fan was a step faster than his senior brother's attack, and he couldn't help but look at the red-clothed woman who was sitting leisurely in the inn. He knew that this couldn't go on, and seeing that the two men weren't stopping, he walked towards the inn and cupped his hands towards the red-clothed woman, saying, "Madam, we didn't mean to offend you. Could you please have your men stop?" Fengjiu glanced at him and said leisurely, "Your senior brother was the one who wanted to teach my men a lesson. Why are you asking my men to stop? Could it be that they're just going to stand there and let you teach them a lesson?" Hearing this, Duan Yunhe revealed a helpless expression and said, "Madam, although I don't know where you're from, it's not a wise decision for you to openly attack a member of the High Firmament Celestial sect. It's fine if my senior brother is fine, but if he's injured, my sect won't just sit by and watch. If that happens, wouldn't it be troublesome? Therefore, I hope that Madam will be magnanimous and stop here." Fengjiu lightly tapped the table as she listened. She watched as the middle-aged man was forced to retreat step by step. His robes had been cut a few times by Du Fan's fan, and although he wasn't bleeding, he was in a very sorry state. Thinking about how they had just arrived here, it wasn't worth it to become enemies with a sect over such a small matter. When she saw Du Fan's fan attack with sharp wind blades, she calmly called out, "Du Fan." It was this sound that caused Du Fan's attack to stop abruptly. No matter how much he wanted to teach him a lesson, once his master spoke, he would stop. Withdrawing the power in his hand, the attack dissipated, and the fan returned to his hand with a whoosh. He glanced at the middle-aged man, who had a shocked expression on his face, and said with a smile, "It's only a so-so." With that, he walked toward the inn. His strength and cultivation weren't as high as theirs, but his swordsmanship was brilliant. If it weren't for his master's help, he wouldn't have been able to break through his opponent's swordsmanship. However, no matter how powerful his swordsmanship was, it wasn't as powerful as his master. His master only needed to look, and no matter how fast his sword was, it wouldn't be able to hide from her. The middle-aged man gritted his teeth and gripped the sword in his hand. How many years had it been? Ever since he became a peak master, he had never been in such a sorry state. Now, he was forced into such a sorry state by an unknown brat and was even mocked for being SOSO. How could he take this lying down? Chapter 3692. Du Fan, watch out. None of Luo Yu and the others in the inn had expected that the middle-aged man would actually attack someone from behind. Moreover, he had done it in front of so many people. When they saw the palm strike, they had already cried out in alarm, because they saw that the palm strike contained a powerful force that fiercely slapped towards Du Fan. In a situation where Du Fan was completely defenseless and had his back facing this scene, if he were to receive this palm strike, then he would probably be heavily injured if not killed. However, because they were rather close to each other and his palm strike had arrived suddenly and fiercely, even if they had swiftly flashed out after they saw it, they were only in time to see that palm strike heavily onto Du Fan's body. Bang! After Du Fan heard Fingzhou's words, he didn't intend to continue attacking. After all, this was enough to make them retreat in the face of difficulties. However, who would have expected that just as he turned around and walked towards the inn, a palm strike struck towards him from behind at a speed that he couldn't cover his ears with. It was so swift and so close that he didn't have the chance to react at all. He only felt a heavy force descend heavily onto his heart meridian on his back. In an instant, his entire body stiffened, and he felt a force spread out from his heart meridian on his back towards his body. A mouthful of blood surged up his throat, causing him to be unable to stop himself from spitting out a mouthful of blood. Spurt! Du Fan! Du Fan! Luo Yu, Wei Feng, and the others flashed over, yet they were only in time to catch his fallen figure. Fresh blood flowed out from his mouth as he looked at his master, who abruptly stood up from the chair. Then he opened his mouth and said to the two people that were supporting him, Take good care of master." As soon as he finished speaking, he fainted. Du Fan! Bang! Right at this moment, a heavy strike resounded. The middle-aged man was blasted flying by Gu Mo's palm strike, and he smashed heavily over 10 meters away while spitting out a mouthful of blood. At this moment, the disciples of the De-Immortal sect were jolted awake, and they cried out in surprise as they ran towards the middle-aged man. Master! Peak Master! The scene fell into chaos for a moment. However, Gu Mo didn't stop there. Instead, he took a step forward and instantly arrived beside the middle-aged man like a bolt of lightning. A powerful pressure swept out, and the disciples who were supporting the middle-aged man were instantly blasted away. Ah! Everyone was bounced back by a force and fell to the ground one after another. However, when they stood up again, they didn't dare to go forward. It was because the man with a cold face was emitting an extremely cold killing intent that made them feel fear in their hearts. Damn you! A cold voice filled with killing intent came from Gu Mo's mouth. He grabbed the middle-aged man's collar with one hand, while his other hand was clenched into a fist that contained hidden energy as he viciously smashed it towards the pale middle-aged man. Stop! Only at this moment did Duan Yunhe return to his senses. The scene from before had occurred too quickly and too suddenly, to the extent that he was unable to recover from his shock. If he hadn't seen it with his own eyes, he wouldn't dare believe that his senior brother, the Peak Master, would actually do something like injure someone behind his back. Moreover, before he could recover from his shock, he saw his senior brother being heavily blasted flying by the man's palm strike. When he saw the man grab his senior brother's collar and clench his fist as he prepared to swing it down, Duan Yunha was shocked. He couldn't care about anything else and charged forward to block the man's fist before it could swing down. Bang! Crack! Chapter 3693. Duan Yunha's hand was trembling, but he didn't dodge. He used his other hand to instantly pull his senior brother back from Gumo's grasp, and at the same time, he swiftly retreated while looking at Gumo with vigilance. Move aside. Gumo stared at Duan Yunha with an icy cold expression, and he didn't conceal his killing intent at all. The pressure Gumo emanated caused Duan Yunha to be unable to help but be shocked. As he gazed at the man before him, he steadied his mind and disregarded his broken arm as he said, "You've already struck my senior brother with a palm strike, and he's heavily injured as well. Moreover, you've broken my arm, so we should be even. Why be so aggressive? We let him off, yet he attacked from behind. You actually have the nerve to say we're even." Wei Feng sneered as he stared at the middle-aged man that was protected by Duan Yunha, and his gaze was ghastly. "He won't be able to leave after injuring one of our men." As he gazed at their furious appearances, Duan Yunha's heart sank slightly, and he felt that the situation had become serious. Especially when his senior brother's palm strike struck right at that middle-aged man's heart. Even if that middle-aged man didn't die, it would probably be difficult for him to survive. When he thought up to here, he swiftly thought of a way to deal with the situation. However, in the current situation, the middle-aged man had already aroused killing intent, and his strength was obviously superior to theirs. If they were to fight, then it would probably be. Fengjiu walked out from within and arrived by Du Fan's side. She helped him take his pulse, and her gaze instantly turned cold when her fingers touched his pulse. She withdrew a medicinal pill and stuffed it into his mouth, and then she said to Luo Yu and Wei Feng who were supporting Du Fan, "Help him in." "Yes." Both of them replied before they hurriedly helped the unconscious Du Fan in. If it was said that Duan Yunha's heart sank slightly when he saw the furious expressions of those men, then his heart couldn't help but tremble when he saw the peerlessly beautiful woman in red clothes slowly stand up and look at him, and an extremely uneasy feeling suffused his heart. "Are you going to hand him over? Or do you want to lose all of you?" A clear and cold voice sounded out in a neither fast nor slow manner, yet it just happened to cause dense uneasiness to surge into Duan Yunha's heart. Even though this beautiful woman in red looked indifferent, he could still see that she was angry. It was a dignified expression, one that made him unable to raise his head and look directly into her eyes. It was a domineering aura like that of a king, so much so that it made his heart tremble with fear and uneasiness. From the moment he saw these people, he knew that they were not ordinary people. When he saw the beautiful woman in red, he knew that his guess was right. He did not want to be enemies with them, but things had gotten out of hand because his senior brother had hurt someone behind their back. Withstanding that powerful pressure, Duan Yunha said with difficulty, "Madam, I'm sorry, but I can't hand my senior apprentice brother over to you. My senior apprentice brother was in the wrong in this matter. Once I bring him back to the immortal sect and report this to the sect master, I will definitely compensate you." However, Fengjiu coldly chuckled when she heard these words. Her gaze swept past Duan Yunha and landed on the immortal sect disciples by the side. Subsequently, she turned around and walked into the inn. An ice-cold voice that contained a pressure rang out from her mouth. "Cripple them." "Yes." Chapter 3694. However, his voice was soon drowned out by screams of agony. "Ah! Ah!" Shrill screams rang out one after another as the disciples' cultivations were crippled. The speed was so fast that they couldn't escape even if they wanted to. Duan Yunha, who was protecting his senior brother, couldn't help but suck in a breath of cold air when he saw this scene. More than a dozen elite disciples of the sect had actually been crippled after years of painstaking cultivation. This was even more painful than killing them with a single sword strike. Duan Yunha couldn't help but tremble slightly when he saw the clean and neat movements of these people, as well as their merciless methods. He only saw a blur in front of his eyes as his senior brother, who was originally protected behind him, was brought out with a hand tightly gripping his neck. No! No! Stop! Crack! Before he could cry out in alarm, he heard a cracking sound. The senior brother, who was already seriously injured, was lifted up. His throat was tightly gripped by a hand, and his throat was crushed. He couldn't even cry out in pain, and his hand fell down powerlessly. Bang! The lifeless body was thrown in front of him and landed on the ground in front of him with a loud bang. Some of the rogue cultivators and the surrounding commoners in the small town were already stunned. They looked at the scene in horror and swallowed their saliva. These people actually crippled the cultivations of those celestial sect disciples and even killed that peak master. This was going to be a big deal. The high firmament celestial sect wouldn't let them go. Duan Yunhe was stunned by the scene in front of him. He stood there, forgetting to react. He couldn't understand how his senior brother, who had come out with him, had died just like that. They had only heard about the purple gold spirit deer and came to take a look. How did things develop to this point? Ah! My cultivation. That when he heard the screams and cries of pain from the nearby disciples, he closed his eyes and stood there straight. His voice was filled with helplessness as he said, "Kill me too." He really didn't know how to face his sect, his master, and the families of these disciples when he returned. "No, we won't kill you." A gentle voice rang out, causing Duan Yunhe to involuntarily open his eyes and look towards the source of the voice. He saw a man wearing a crescent moon robe, who had been quietly standing beside the red-clothed woman, walk over and stop in front of him. Leng Hua looked at the man in white in front of him and said in his usual gentle voice, "Take your men and leave. You can return to your immortal sect and report back. However, I also have some words of advice for you. It would be best if this matter ends here. If your immortal sect wants revenge, then that's fine. Come find us as long as you can bear the consequences." As soon as he finished speaking, Leng Hua withdrew his gaze and turned to walk inside. Guamo and the others coldly glanced at Duan Yunhe before they turned around and walked back into the inn. Du Fan's injuries were severe. Although their master was there, they couldn't help but worry. Watching them return to the inn, Duan Yunhe pursed his lips, unable to say a word. Chapter 3695. Such unyielding and confident words shook Duan Yunhe's heart. He stood there for a long time without moving, and he was slightly stunned. Now that things had escalated to this point, how could the celestial sect let this matter go? But if they didn't stop here, then these people. Duan Yunhe sighed inwardly and shook his head. He glanced at his senior brother's corpse and bent down to help him up. Only then did he walk towards the wailing disciples on the ground. When his gaze fell on his senior brother's disciple, Zhou Qingxiong, his expression turned cold. If it wasn't for him, then how could things have escalated to this point? That person really deserved to die. Zhou Qingxiong's strength had been crippled, and he was lying on the ground. His cultivation had dissipated, and his face was as pale as a sheet of paper. Large beads of cold sweat were dripping down his forehead. He had witnessed his master's death with his own eyes. That scene had finally shocked him. He hadn't expected things to develop like this, and he hadn't expected his master to die like this. But now that things had already happened, what was the point of talking about it? The only thing he could do now was to report to the celestial sect and prevent his master from dying in vain. But when he met Duan Yunhe's cold gaze, he was shocked and he couldn't help but lower his head. Duan Yunhe's cold gaze shifted away from Zhou Qingxiong's body. He looked at the disciples and said in a deep voice, "I'll take you back to the celestial sect." With that, he waved his hand and a transportation array appeared in his hand. As the transportation array was activated, the people sitting on the ground instantly disappeared from the small town. When they saw this scene, the surrounding commoners looked at each other, then glanced at the inn and silently left. Although they hadn't seen any big shots in the small town, they knew that these people were definitely extraordinary people when they arrived. Sure enough, their guess was correct. Those outstanding men and women weren't even afraid of the celestial sex people. They had even killed the celestial sex peak master and crippled the disciples' cultivation. They had all been crippled. This wasn't a small matter, it was a huge matter. The burly old man, who was sitting in the corner and smoking his water pipe, also swallowed his saliva. His eyes were filled with fear as he looked at the inn. Something big had happened. Those people who came out of nowhere had actually killed the people from the immortal sect and crippled their cultivation. The immortal sect would definitely not let this matter rest. When the old man thought of this, he stopped sucking on his hookah and quickly stood up. "Old man, where are you going?" The man quickly pulled him back and asked. "Where are we going?" "Of course it's to run for their lives." "Do you think they'll be able to leave so quickly?" "There are people in the inn who have been seriously injured, so they will definitely be recuperating here. As for the people from the immortal sect, they will definitely come again. If you don't want to be affected, then hurry up and pack up your bags and leave. Go out and lie low for a while," the old man said as he slapped his hand away and quickly left. Hearing this, the man's eyes were filled with fear. After thinking for a while, he also went back to the house to pack his things. Well, no matter what, it's better to go out and lie low for a while first. Within the inn, Du Fan was placed on a bed by Wei Feng and the others. But at this moment, he was unconscious, and his countenance was pale like a sheet of paper and was on the verge of death. Fan Lin helped him take his pulse from the side and gave him some medicine to consume, yet he still didn't wake up. "Master is here. Master is here." Chapter 3696. When everyone saw her come in, they hurriedly opened up a path for her. Fan Lin looked at her, his expression slightly serious, and said, "Master, Du Fan's injuries are extremely serious, all of his internal organs are damaged, and his heart meridian is dead. If Master had not given Du Fan a 9th-level medicinal pill, Du Fan would have already stopped breathing." Fengjiu walked forward and sat down by the bed. She looked at the unconscious Du Fan on the bed, and reached out to feel his pulse again. After a while, she withdrew her hand and said to Fan Lin, "Take off his clothes." "Yes." Fan Lin replied and took off Du Fan's clothes. Even though he was already mentally prepared, when he saw the dark purple palm print on Du Fan's back, he could not help but gasp. Hiss! This palm print. This palm strike was extremely heavy. Even the spot on his back that was struck by the palm had caved in slightly. A clear handprint could be seen on his back, and because of the clotted blood, the handprint was already tinged with a purplish-red color. Fengjiu stared at the palm print, her eyes narrowing. "Ling Shuang, prepare a brush and ink. After I write down the prescription, quickly prepare the medicinal bath." "Yes." Ling Shuang replied, and took out a brush, ink, and paper from her space and placed it on the table. If it was not for the fact that the green lotus qi in her body was not flowing, she could use the vitality of the green lotus to treat Du Fan. Unfortunately, the vitality of the green lotus qi could not be used, so she could only use medicine to treat him. She wrote down 2 prescriptions on the table, and handed them to Fan Lin. "Prepare the spiritual medicine. If there is a shortage, come and find me. This one is for the medicinal bath, and this one is for 2 bowls of water. Boil it until it is 70% and bring it to him." "Yes." Fan Lin replied, and after receiving the prescriptions, he went to prepare. Their space had always been stocked with all kinds of herbs, so it wasn't difficult to get them. Otherwise, they wouldn't know where to find them in this small town. On one side, they were busy with Du Fan's treatment. On the other side, the disciple who was guarding the life lamp saw that one of the life lamps in the hall had gone out. He was so scared that his face turned pale. He went forward to see whose life lamp it was and ran out. Oh no! Not good. Crimson Spirit Peak's Peak Master Ren's life lamp had been extinguished. This is bad. Within the sect, the news spread quickly. Many disciples came out to discuss, what's going on? Why did I hear that someone's life lamp was extinguished? The life lamp of the Peak Lord of the Crimson Spirit Peak has extinguished. The disciples of the Light Guard Hall have all rushed to report to the sect master. Hiss. Is this for real? That's Peak Master Ren, how could he? Yesterday, I saw Peak Master Ren and my master playing chess and drinking wine together. Why did his natal light go out today? What's going on? I also saw him yesterday, and he was fine. How could it be gone just like that? Although I don't know what's going on, but the fall of a Peak Master is a big deal. While everyone was discussing, they suddenly saw a flash of light at the teleportation formation of the sect. Everyone was stunned and said, why is there a flash of light at the teleportation formation? Did someone come back from outside? Let's go. Let's go and see. Chapter 3697. Naturally, they were familiar with the dozen or so disciples dressed in the sect's uniform. However, why did they return with their cultivation bases crippled? And that person being supported by Martial Uncle Duan, isn't that Peak Master Ren? However, he was really, with their strength and cultivation, they were naturally able to tell with a single glance that Peak Master Ren was being supported by Martial Uncle Duan at this moment. No matter if it was his powerless limbs or the aura of death that suffused his body, they all knew that he, Peak Master Ren, was really dead. Duan Yunhe looked at the disciples who had rushed over and ordered in a deep voice, send them back first. As soon as he finished speaking, he brought Duan Yunhe's senior brother's corpse back to the sect leader's main peak. After the time it took for half an incense stick to burn, all the peak masters, elders, and venerables of the Soaring Firmament Celestial sect had gathered at the main peak. Peak Master Ren's corpse was placed on the ground in front of them. Everyone looked at Peak Master Ren's corpse as they listened to Duan Yunhe's explanation. Their expressions turned grave as they listened. That's what happened. Duan Yunhe looked at the sect leader, wondering how the sect leader would deal with this matter. Bang! One of the Peak Masters slammed his hand on the small table beside him and said angrily, they killed our Peak Master and crippled our disciples' cultivation bases. The Soaring Firmament Celestial sect will definitely settle this score. That's right. These people are too arrogant. They disregarded the Soaring Firmament Celestial sect and attacked our disciples. This is an insult to the sect's reputation. If we don't deal with this matter, how are we going to stand tall in the future? How are we going to face the clans of the disciples whose cultivation bases were crippled? What about Peak Master Ren's clan? Duan Yunhe looked around and saw that other than the two Peak Masters who had a relatively bad temper and were close friends with his senior brother, everyone else was silent, as if they were thinking about something. He looked at the sect leader who was sitting on the main seat and saw him stroking his beard with a thoughtful expression on his face. It was obvious he was also thinking about how to deal with this matter. Duan Yunhe was surprised by this scene. He had thought that after the news spread, the people in the sect would step forward and demand that this matter be dealt with severely. Great Elder, what do you think? The sect master pondered for a moment before turning to the Great Elder. Being questioned, the first elder paused for a moment and said, if what Yunhe said is true, then it is Peak Master Ren's fault. His mistake is that he shouldn't have attacked from the back and killed him after the other party stopped attacking. He paused for a moment before continuing, however, those people didn't show any mercy when they attacked. Not only did they kill Peak Master Ren, they also crippled the cultivation of over a dozen of our immortal sect's disciples. This method is a bit too much. If we don't deal with this matter, as Peak Master Sun said, our immortal sect won't be able to give an explanation to the families of the dozen or so disciples, and we won't be able to give an explanation to Peak Master Ren's family. However, if we want to deal with this matter, we don't even know the origin of the other party. Hearing this, the sect leader nodded. That's true. Not bad. Chapter 3698. At this moment, an old man raised his eyelids and glanced at Peak Master Sun. Peak Master Sun's words aren't correct. Our immortal firmament has a foundation of over 1,000 years. The immortal sect is filled with experts, and there are countless clans that rely on our immortal sect to strengthen themselves. Why would we fear a mere dozen people? We're still discussing how to deal with this matter. It's too early to say that it's not the style of the High Firmament Celestial sect to be afraid of them. With our foundation, how can we be frightened by a random person? Sun Feng, it's fine if you say these words here, but if you say them outside, you'll really embarrass our soaring firmament immortal sect. Being reprimanded in front of so many people, Peak Master Sun's expression didn't look too good, but he didn't say anything and just pursed his lips. After all, the other party's seniority was far higher than his, and he couldn't casually talk back. Everyone secretly nodded when they heard the old man's words. That's right, it was impossible to say that they were afraid of those people. With their sect's thousands of years of foundation, how could they be afraid of a dozen people who came out of nowhere? What made them hesitate and not know how to deal with it was that Peak Master Ren had injured someone behind his back. If the reason for this matter were to spread, it would truly be a loss of face for their immortal sect. A Peak Master of an immortal sect had already let him go after he was no match for the other party, but he actually injured someone behind his back. If this matter was spread out, how would the other sects view them? After all, it wasn't just a disciple, but a Peak Master. This influence was still very great. Then, according to everyone's opinion, how do you think this matter should be dealt with appropriately? The sect master asked. His slightly furrowed brows had already loosened. It was obvious that he already had an idea. Everyone looked at each other when they saw this. Someone said, I think it's best for our sect not to interfere in this matter. As long as we inform his family that Peak Master Ren has been killed, it's up to them how they want to deal with it. The same goes for the other disciples who have their cultivation crippled. Let their families deal with this matter themselves. No matter what the outcome is, it has nothing to do with our sect. I think it's best to remove our sect from this matter. Yes, I think so too. Another Peak Master nodded. If we do this, we can indeed pull our sect out of this mess. However, if our immortal sect doesn't do anything, wouldn't that be too? A Peak Master said hesitantly. He felt that if the sect didn't do anything, it would be too cold-blooded and heartless. Another old man glanced at the crowd and said, if you think this method isn't good enough, then use another method. Use the power of the immortal sect to wipe out all those people. Firstly, it will establish the might of our immortal sect. Secondly, it will serve as a deterrent to all parties. Thirdly, we can avenge Peak Master Ren and the others. Killing 3 birds with 1 stone. Hearing this, everyone thought for a moment and said, that works too. However, the sect master stroked his beard and smiled. He looked at Duan Yunhe, who had been standing there silently, and asked, Yunhe, what do you think? Hearing this, everyone's gazes fell on Duan Yunhe. Duan Yunhe was slightly taken aback. He raised his head to look at the smiling sect master Han and said, Sect master, I think it's best to let this matter rest. Chapter 3699. Duan Yunhe looked at the Peak Master, then at the others, and said, none of you have seen those people, so you don't know what kind of people they are. However, I'm different. I've seen them and personally felt how powerful they are. I know that if this matter continues, it will be even more difficult to stop in the end. The wisest thing to do is to stop it now. He paused and looked at them, then said in a deep voice, it's true that there are times when people fight for revenge, but there are times when they have to swallow their anger even if it doesn't go well. Moreover, we all know how this matter developed to this point and how senior brother Rin died. Hearing this, no one spoke. Some were silent, some were frowning, some were deep in thought, and some stared at Duan Yunhe and asked curiously, "There's something I don't understand, but I don't know if it's appropriate to ask." Seeing that the Peak Master was looking at him, Duan Yunhe said, "Peak Master Feng, please ask." "I don't understand why Peak Master Ren died and the cultivation of more than 10 disciples were crippled, but only your arm was broken. Moreover, according to what you said, they didn't attack you first, but you blocked an attack for Peak Master Ren when you tried to save him. However, why was that? Why did they let you go out of all of them?" Not to mention the people in the hall, even Duan Yunhe was stunned when he heard this. However, he didn't think too much about it and only said, "At that time, I also thought that they would attack me, but they let me go and only asked me to bring a message back. I think it was because they wanted me to bring a message back to the sect." Although he said this, he didn't think too much about it before, but now that Peak Master Feng mentioned it, he felt that it was a little strange. If it was really just to bring a message back, why did it have to be him? Moreover, other than the injury caused by blocking the attack with his arm, he didn't have any other injuries. Those people didn't hurt him from the beginning, so why was that? Seeing that everyone in the hall was staring at Duan Yunhe and sizing him up, as if they were trying to guess whether he was related to those people, the sect master at the main seat laughed. He looked at Duan Yunhe and asked, "Yunhe, even you don't understand?" Duan Yunhe looked to the sect master and shook his head. "Sect master, I didn't know them before this, nor have I seen them before." "Yes, I know." The sect master nodded his head and stroked his beard with a smile on his face. It seemed that he had been smiling ever since a while ago. It was as if the death of Peak Master Ren and the crippling of the cultivation of his disciples meant nothing to him. "Does the Grand Elder know?" The Grand Elder looked at the Grand Elder and asked. The sect master stroked his beard and said, "I know. Furthermore, I already have an idea on how to deal with this matter." Hearing this, everyone looked at each other. Then, they all looked at him and asked, "Headmaster, how should we deal with this? Let's drop this matter." As the sect master spoke, his wise eyes swept across everyone's faces. No one is allowed to find trouble with them. Chapter 3700. The sect master stroked his beard and swept his wise and far-sighted gaze across the crowd's faces. Finally, he spoke neither hurriedly nor slowly. "Why do you think that Peak Master Ren is dead and more than 10 disciples of the sect have had their cultivation crippled but Yunhe managed to return alive?" "Of course, he came back to deliver a message," Sun Feng said without thinking. "Ha!" The sect master chuckled and shook his head. "If you listened carefully to Yunhe's story, you'll know the reason." Everyone was stunned when they heard this. Some of them fell into deep thought while others frowned. After a long while, the Grand Elder said, "Sect Master, are you trying to say that Yunhe was able to return alive and preserve his cultivation base because he didn't have any designs on the violet gold spirit deer and even persuaded Peak Master Ren?" The sect master stroked his beard and nodded. "That's right. From this incident, it can be seen that the woman in red is a person who clearly distinguishes between kindness and hatred. Their cultivation base is obviously higher than Yunhe and Peak Master Ren's. If they were outside the inn, it's impossible for the people inside not to know. Moreover, Yunhe also said that he had been trying to stop the two parties from fighting. From the beginning until the end, he didn't want to become enemies with those people. Those people also understood this, so they didn't make a move on him." The sect master paused for a moment before he continued, "Otherwise, with their strength, they could easily kill more than a dozen disciples. They crippled more than a dozen disciples' cultivation bases but spared their lives. This is enough to see what kind of people they are." Ever since Duan Yunhe had returned and brought up the matter, the sect master had been thinking about it carefully. In the end, from various signs, he could see that the woman in red was a person who clearly distinguished between kindness and hatred. When they fought, they had the upper hand, but when they stopped, it was clear that they had a graceful demeanor. If Peak Master Ren did not hurt her people, they would not have been so ruthless. After Peak Master Ren heard her people, her method of dealing with the matter was also swift and decisive. Her actions were enough to shock everyone. From this, it could be seen that the woman in red was not an ordinary person. However, she was not a vicious person either. Instead, she was a person who clearly distinguished between kindness and hatred. Since they dared to let Yunhee bring back such words, it was enough to prove that they were not afraid of the High Firmament Celestial sect. After all, they were strong enough to fight against the High Firmament Celestial sect. Since that was the case, why should he hold on to this matter and create such a strong enemy for the High Firmament Celestial sect? Everyone in the hall remained silent as they listened to the sect leader's words. On the other hand, Duan Yunha was slightly startled. He never thought that he would be able to return alive because of this. Even if they are people who clearly distinguish between kindness and hatred, they still killed Peak Leader Ren and crippled the cultivation bases of more than 10 sect disciples. Are we just going to let this matter rest? Peak Leader's son asked in a low voice, his fists clenched. He felt that this answer was not satisfactory at all. The sect master glanced at him and said, "Did I not make myself clear? Peak Master's son, this matter ends here. Also, Yunhee will go and explain the situation to Peak Master Ren's family." Yunhee. The sect master looked at him. "Here," Duan Yunha replied. Chapter 3701. Upon hearing this, Duan Yunha replied, "Yes." The sect master waved his hand and gestured for everyone to leave. Also, send a dozen or so disciples back to their clans and inform them of what happened. Let's drop this matter and disperse. Duan Yunha summoned a disciple and asked him to bring his senior brother back to clean him up. He had to bandage his severed arm and report this matter to his master who was in seclusion. After everyone left, the sect master stood up with his hands behind his back and walked to the back of the hall. In his heart, he was a little curious about the red-clothed woman and her group. However, he knew that if they were extraordinary people, it would not take long for news of them to spread across the continent. Peak Master's son, who had walked out of the hall, had his hands behind his back and was fuming. As one of the 4 major celestial sects, they had suppressed this matter just like that. He was filled with anger because of how they handled this matter. Peak Master's son. Peak Master's son. An elder called out to him several times, but he did not respond. Thus, he went up to him and called out again, "Peak Master's son. Are you still thinking about what happened just now?" Peak Master's son came back to his senses and saw that it was the 3rd elder. He said, "I didn't expect the sect master to handle it this way. You don't have to think too much about it. The sect master's words are reasonable." In the end, Peak Master Ren was in the wrong. Let's just let it go. A Peak Master walked over and shook his head with a sigh. It's just a pity about the 2 purple gold spirit deer. According to Yunha, those were 2 mature purple gold spirit deer. You have to know that every part of a purple gold spirit deer is a treasure. It's difficult to find even one in the other sections. I didn't expect those people to have 2 of them. Moreover, they used them to pull the carriage. What a waste of God's gifts. Old He, you're in charge of the sect's medicine peak. What kind of medicine can't you get? Don't worry about the 2 purple gold spirit deer. Look, because of those purple gold spirit deer, Peak Master Ren and the others lost their lives. Isn't that enough warning? They talked as they walked. In the end, all of them shook their heads and left without saying anything else. Only Peak Master's son, after leaving, was slightly moved. He went to the disciples whose cultivations had been destroyed. Due to Du Fan's serious injuries, Fengzhou and the others' journey was slowed down. They stayed in the small town for 2 days to help Du Fan's recovery. That palm strike had injured the heart meridian. If it had been an ordinary person, they would have died long ago. However, because Du Fan had a good foundation and Fengzhou was here, his injuries were gradually recovering. Du Fan, when he, Fengzhou Fan. His fan. Master. Du Fan's hand is moving. Luo Yu quickly walked to Fingzhou and told her the good news. Fingzhou smiled. He's been unconscious for 2 or 3 days. It's time for him to wake up, she said. She went next door with Luo Yu. Master, I just checked Du Fan's pulse. His pulse has recovered. Fan Lin smiled. He looked at Fingzhou, who came in with Luo Yu. That's good. Boil the medicine for him again until he wakes up. As he spoke, Du Fan's mouth moved slightly, and a weak voice came out of his mouth. Chapter 3702. Give him some water. Fingzhou said and asked them to give Du Fan some water. She helped him feel his pulse again. She felt that his pulse was beating under her fingertips. She revealed a smile and said to Qin Axan, boil some porridge and give it to him later. He should wake up soon. Okay. Qin Axan replied and turned to walk out. After Fan Lin fed him some water and saw that he had fallen asleep again, he said to Fingzhou, Master, I'll take care of things here. You should go back and rest. It's fine, Fingzhou said. She came to the table and wrote another prescription. She handed it to Fan Lin and said, Tomorrow, we'll use this prescription to boil the medicine. Okay. Fan Lin took the prescription and put it away. In the middle of the night, just as Fingzhou expected, Du Fan really woke up. Although it was the middle of the night, everyone was happy because he woke up. The inn was bustling with activity. Du Fan, it's good that you woke up. You really scared us to death. Fortunately, Master is here. Otherwise, no one can save your life. Next time, you have to be more careful. Don't let others take advantage of you. Luo Yu muttered at the side and said, Master said you would wake up. He asked Qin Axan to boil some porridge and keep it warm. You can eat some now that you've woken up. Fan Lin saw that he was muttering at the side and said, Okay, he just woke up. Let him drink some water and eat some porridge. Also, let him drink another bowl of medicine. Du Fan, let me tell you, that villain that injured you from behind is already dead, and the cultivations of all the disciples of those sects have been crippled. Your enmity can be considered to have been avenged. As Wei Feng spoke, he passed a cup of water to Fan Lin and asked him to feed it to Du Fan. You're so seriously injured this time. It really scared us. You said that you've survived so many dangers and tribulations in the past. If you really died under that palm, it would really be an injustice. What do you mean by dying? Isn't he still alive and well? All right, let's not talk about it anymore. The air is not good with so many people crowded here. Let's all go out. Fan Lin began to chase them out, or let them go back to their rooms to rest. Du Fan, who had just woken up, saw everyone talking and laughing. Seeing them all crowded in the room to look at him, he couldn't help but smile. He said to them, I've made you all worry. Because his body had just recovered, his strength was still weak, and his voice sounded weak. Okay, we'll go out first, Luo Yu and the others said and went out first, leaving Fan Lin, Qin Axan, and Bai Qingqing in the room. At this time, Fingzhou walked in from outside. Seeing her, everyone was slightly surprised. Master, you haven't slept yet? Fingzhou glanced at them and said, You know it's late at night. It's even noisier than the market. Who can sleep here? She walked inside and said, All right, you all don't have to stand here. Go back to your rooms. Everyone grinned and only then did they reply and go back to their rooms. Fingzhou came to the bedside. Seeing that Du Fan was awake, she said, Recuperate well. Recuperating is the most important thing. Thank you, Master. I've troubled you. Du Fan said and looked at his master who came to the bedside. Chapter 3703. Okay, I got it. Fan Lin agreed and discussed the medicine with her. After sitting for a while, Fengjiu went back to his room to rest. Du Fan's recuperation lasted for half a month. Early in the morning, everyone was ready to leave the town they had lived in for more than half a month. What surprised the people of the small town was that in this half a month, the immortal sect didn't send anyone to deal with them. It was as if nothing had happened. This surprised the people of the small town as well as some of the rogue cultivators who settled down here. As one of the four great immortal sects, the High Firmament Immortal Sect lost a peak master and more than a dozen disciples, but in the end, this matter was suppressed. From this, it could be seen that the strength of these people was very strong. Even the immortal sect was very afraid of them. However, after the purple gold spirit deer carriage slowly left the town, Fengjiu and the others who were going to the next town were watched on a mountain road. Look, aren't those two purple gold spirit deers? It's said that the purple gold spirit deer's body is full of treasures. The deer's blood is also a detoxification elixir. I thought the news was wrong, but I didn't expect there to be purple gold spirit deer coming here. Big brother, the news of the purple gold spirit deer has spread. I think even if we get it, I'm afraid we can't keep it. A man said and wanted to retreat. So what? After we get it, we can quickly make a move. Then we can make a profit. Such a good thing just happened to happen to us. You see, other people can't even find the purple gold spirit deer. The one-eyed man in the lead said. He held a saber in his hand and stared at Leng Hua who was driving the spirit deer carriage and Du Fan who was sitting outside. But, big brother, these people look very strong. I'm worried. Old 6. Even if you do it 10 times, I don't think you'll be strong enough. But if you don't want to do it, just say it. Anyway, we'll get a lot, so don't be jealous. When the man heard this, he quickly said, I'll do it. How can I not do it? Big brother, I'll do it. Oh. Do it? What are you doing? A voice suddenly sounded in their ears. For a moment, no one could react, especially the few people who were talking. They even followed the person's words. Of course it's the two purple gold spirit deers. Oh. It's just that you guys don't seem to be qualified. Hearing this, those people were startled. They abruptly turned around and saw a man sitting on a tree branch with his arms crossed over his chest. He was staring at them with a smile that was not a smile. You are the person beside the spirit deer carriage. Why are we here all of a sudden? One of them was stunned and somewhat puzzled. Wei Feng revealed a smile and stretched out his hand to break off a branch. The branch still had leaves on it, and he leaped down from it and attacked the group of people below without warning. Of course I'm here to deal with you. As soon as his voice fell, a blood-curdling scream followed. Swish. Aw. Hiss. Aw. The numerous cries of surprise and shrill cries shocked the birds on the surrounding trees and branches to the point they flew away. The speed at which Wei Feng attacked was extremely swift, and the branches in his hand that carried leaves swished down onto the bodies of those people. Chapter 3704. The smell of blood suffused the air as those people fell down one by one, yet they didn't die and only ceaselessly howled with grief. Where did all of you find out about the violet gold spirit deer? Wei Feng's voice sounded out from his mouth as he held the branch in his hand and pressed it against the one-eyed man's throat. The branch wasn't sharp, yet it caused the one-eyed man to not dare breathe loudly. Spare my life, hero, spare my life. Speak. Wei Feng shouted as the branch in his hand pierced forward slightly, causing a trace of blood to seep out from the man's throat, and it shocked the man to the point his face went pale. Someone spread the news that an extremely rare violet gold spirit deer has appeared in this small town, and many cultivators know about it. Moreover, someone issued a mercenary mission and is already rushing over here. There's. The one-eyed man gulped down a mouthful of saliva and said, there's also the portraits of all of you that have been pasted on the bounty board. Someone wants to buy your lives. Wei Feng's gaze flickered when he heard this. Our portraits have been pasted on the bounty board. Someone wants to buy our lives. Who's so daring? This, I don't know. I really don't know. The one-eyed man hurriedly said. Wei Feng glanced at those people on the ground and only grunted coldly. If I encounter all of you again, then be careful of your little lives. Fuck off. As soon as he finished speaking, he withdrew the branch in his hand and struck the one-eyed man's stomach, causing him to be directly blasted a few meters away. Those people didn't dare say anything, and all of them disregarded the injuries on their bodies as they supported each other, stood up, and swiftly left in panic. After they left, Wei Feng headed towards the spirit deer carriage and arrived at the side of the carriage before he said, Master, someone wants to buy our lives. Our appearances have been drawn and pasted on the bounty board. Now that the news about the violet gold spirit deer has already been spread, the journey probably won't be peaceful. Within the spirit deer carriage, the corners of Fengzhou's mouth curled up slightly when he heard this. Oh. Want to buy our lives. That's interesting. The people in the surroundings couldn't help but look at each other and smile when they heard this. Buy our lives. This person's courage was not ordinary. They were curious as to who actually dared to buy their lives. Master, could it be that the people from the High Firmament Celestial sect released the news? They are the only ones who have seen us. Leng Hua pondered as he drove the spirit deer carriage. It seemed like there was no one else other than the people from the High Firmament Celestial sect. Fengzhou took a sip of tea and said, if it's the people from the High Firmament Celestial sect, it wouldn't have been so peaceful for the past half a month. However, it doesn't make sense if it has nothing to do with the High Firmament Celestial sect. Master, you mean to say that the sect leader of the High Firmament Celestial sect should have suppressed this matter, but there are still people below who are playing tricks? Yes. Feng Zhou responded, I'm guessing that it should be those disciples whose cultivation was crippled. If their sect masters wanted to pursue the matter, they wouldn't have come alone during this period of time. So, it's obvious that their immortal sect suppressed this matter, and the only ones who suffered losses in this matter are those disciples whose cultivation was crippled. If it's really like this, then I really had to kill them directly at that time. Wei Feng's eyes narrowed as a wisp of killing intent flashed within them. Chapter 3705. His casual words revealed a sense of confidence and leisure. Clearly, he did not take this matter seriously. That's right, who were they? They were all people who had experienced the tribulation of 1,000 creations. Their current cultivation was definitely not something an ordinary person could compare with. How could they take this matter seriously? They quickly tossed this matter to the back of their minds and continued to move forward, preparing to find a suitable place to stay. In the evening, the spirit deer carriage slowly moved along the mountain road. Today, they would probably have to spend the night here. Therefore, while the sky was not dark yet, they discussed and stopped to rest. Fengzhou did not get down from the spirit deer carriage. Instead, he rested in the carriage. In the carriage, Ling Shuang and Qin Axan served him on his left and right. Outside the carriage, Leng Hua, Du Fan, and Bai Qingqing were also guarding. Just make a fire. We still have food in our space. Use the spirit rice to cook some porridge for Master. That's easy. You guys rest here for a while. We'll go prepare. As Wei Feng spoke, he and Guemo walked towards the forest at the side. Bai Qingqing got down from the carriage to help. She mainly cooked some porridge. The food for the others was fine. The dry rations in the space could be easily solved. Everyone was busy. As the sky gradually darkened, the fragrance of the porridge spread. She scooped a bowl and carried it into the spirit deer carriage for Fengzhou. The others sat around the fire and chatted. Suddenly, the smile on Luo Yu's face disappeared. His gaze swept towards a certain direction. In that direction, a sharp arrow shot out and shot towards the two spirit deer carriages. Whoosh! In that instant, a figure flashed out and grabbed the arrow that was shot towards the spirit deer. At the same time, he raised his hand and shot the arrow back towards the forest. Ah! At the same time that a scream was heard, a furious roar was also heard. Attack! Release the arrows! As soon as the voice fell, countless sharp arrows whizzed towards them. At that moment, everyone jumped up. They protected the spirit deer carriage and formed a protective barrier with their spiritual aura. They blocked all the arrows that were shot at them. With a raise of their hand, the arrows shot back in the direction they came from. Whoosh! Ah! Shrill cries and the smell of blood filled the air in the small forest. Countless arrows were shot back at a speed that was too fast for the ears to cover. As for the battle outside, Fengjiu was calmly eating the spirit rice porridge in the carriage. He was neither frightened nor flustered, as if the outside of the carriage was completely calm. After drinking a bowl of porridge, Song Yunxian told Qin Axan, "Go and get Du Fan a bowl of porridge. He has just recovered, so he doesn't need to eat those dry foods. He will feel better after drinking a bowl of porridge." Okay. Qin Axan answered and went out with the bowl. "Master, do you want to lie down and sleep?" Leng Shuang asked. Fengjiu responded lazily and laid down on the couch. He covered himself with a blanket and closed his eyes to sleep. Seeing this, Leng Shuang raised his hand and formed a soundproof boundary to isolate all the sounds outside so as not to disturb Song Yunshuan's rest. After doing this, Song Yunxian sat quietly on the side. Outside, Luo Yu and the others cleaned up the corpses and sat back by the fire to chat. It was not until the next morning that they continued to move forward. Chapter 3706. Just as the first group of people had said, their journey was not peaceful. Along the way, other than ambushers, there were also some mercenaries and rogue cultivators who attacked them. Groups of people caught up with them one after another, which really made them a little annoyed. However, now that they were in the city, it was expected that those who wanted to make a move would have some fear. Moreover, in a place like this, if anyone really made a move, they were prepared to make an example of them and let those people know their methods. After sitting in the carriage for a few days, "Master, after entering the city, let's find an inn to have a good rest," Luo Yu said with a smile, looking ahead and talking to Fengjiu in the spirit deer carriage. "Well, it's okay to rest here for a day or two before leaving," Fengjiu said, lifting the curtain and looking out. The purple gold spirit deer carriage was extremely dazzling. Even people who didn't know the purple gold spirit deer carriage couldn't help but look at the two spirit deer carriages a little more. When they saw the outstanding men beside the spirit deer carriage, some people's eyes flashed, some people's eyes showed appreciation, some people looked at them with surprise, and most people looked at them with a bit of a strange look. However, their outstanding appearance and temperament had attracted people's attention for a day or two, so they didn't pay much attention to it. After entering the city gate, they wanted to find someone to ask about the inn in the city. Who knew that before they could speak, everyone avoided them like tigers and scorpions? "I'm ugly. Or very scary. Why do they all retreat when they see me?" Luo Yu touched his face, which he thought was handsome, and looked depressed. Those people looked at them as if they were some kind of plague, and they were all afraid to avoid them. "Forget it, let's go look for them," Leng Hua said, looking at the common people and cultivators on the street, and felt strange in his heart. Even if their portraits were posted on the bounty list, the common people didn't have to be so afraid of them, right? Because no one answered when they asked for directions, they finally found an inn to stay in. After booking a room, Fengjiu and the spirit deer carriage slowly walked into the inn. However, not long after Fengjiu went upstairs and entered the room, there was a faint vibration in the street. Hurry up. Swish. The woman's voice was a little rough, and it was different from the usual gentle voice of a woman. It made people guess that this woman might be very strong and ugly even without seeing her face. Accompanying the woman's voice was the sharp sound of a whip being lashed out. It was as if the whip had landed on something, and the sound was very loud and clear. Grey Wolf, who was walking at the back, looked back and saw a strong woman riding a huge ferocious beast not far away. The black whip in her hand was forcefully lashing the ferocious beast she was riding. Her clothes were strange, and it could be said that the areas of her body that were exposed were far more than what was covered by the cloth. Moreover, she had a sturdy figure, and her skin was an ancient color. Her originally strong body made her chest look very plump. However, Hui Lang still couldn't figure out the thing that covered her chest with 2 iron covers. What exactly was that thing for? Chapter 3707. Capture that handsome black-clothed man for me. Hui Lang's footsteps stopped. He turned around to take a look and saw the robust woman's eyes that were suffused with an excited glow staring fixedly at him. Moreover, he seemed to be the only person in black clothes in the surroundings. Moreover, it wasn't that he was narcissistic, but he was indeed the most handsome amongst the people in the surroundings. But, capture him. Just as he was thinking, he saw a few masked and armored guards stretch out their hands towards him, wanting to capture him without saying a word. When he saw them, his figure flashed, and he turned his body to the side and sent a flying kick, sending those people flying. Bang! 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 Those armored guards were kicked flying and fell to the ground one by one. They couldn't help but let out a muffled groan and couldn't stand up for a long time. But unexpectedly, the robust woman's eyes lit up when she saw this scene. This is a real man. Charge! You must capture him. The robust woman waved her large hand, and over 10 armored guards surged out from the shadows and moved forward. Didn't you say there were more? Why is there only one? The robust woman asked. When her small eyes descended onto the person beside her, the whip in her hand was raised and lashed out. Whoosh! Slap! Where are the others? Didn't you say there were more? Or did you lie to me? The robust woman shouted angrily. When the whip in her hand was about to lash out again, that person hurriedly knelt down. No, no, no. There really are more. I saw them enter the city with my own eyes. They should have entered the inn to rest. Hearing these words, the robust woman's eyes lit up, and she stared into the inn. Is that so? I want to go in and take a look. She flipped over and got down from the assailant's body. Her face carried a covetous expression as she walked step by step into the inn. Unexpectedly, as soon as she stepped into the inn, that robust figure was heavily kicked flying by a foot, and her entire body was sent flying. Ah! Bang! A cry of pain sounded out, and the sound of someone heavily landing on the ground caused the ground to tremble slightly. Wei Feng walked out from inside and flicked his sleeve. He didn't even glance at the woman who was kicked flying and said to Hui Lang, "Why are they fighting again? Who are these people?" "I don't know, but I think it's because of my beauty," Hui Lang said with a straight face. Wei Feng was stunned when he heard this, and then he roared with laughter. "Because of your beauty? Hui Lang, do you have any beauty to speak of?" Hui Lang rolled his eyes as he condensed strength in his palm and pushed out, causing all the guards that pounced over to be blasted flying. At the same time, he couldn't help but stare wide open when he saw the robust woman that had crawled up from the ground and actually pounced towards Wei Feng, and he shouted out. Wei Feng got as soon as these words were spoken, Wei Feng swiftly retreated, yet the robust woman strode forward like an arrow, and she directly pounced forward to push Wei Feng to the ground. Bang! Yes! Wei Feng's body heavily smashed onto the ground as he let out a muffled groan, and his face instantly flushed red. It was as if a breath of air was stuck in his throat, and it didn't come up for a long time. "How are you? How are you?" When the robust woman saw Wei Feng's appearance, her eyes emitted stars, and she pressed her entire body onto his without moving down. She even tightly wrapped her arms around his neck and was about to kiss him. Fuck off. Chapter 3708. "Miss, isn't it not good for you to be so wild?" A voice that carried a smile sounded out, causing the robust woman to be unable to help but be stunned, and she raised her head to look at the person that spoke. She couldn't help but be stunned with this glance. The man wore a low-profile and luxurious robe, had a handsome and gentle appearance, and the smile on his face was like a spring breeze. He held a fan in his hand as he lightly fanned himself, and he carried the appearance of an elegant and noble young master, causing her to be dumbstruck. Fuck off. Wei Feng seized this opportunity to push the woman away before swiftly standing up, and then he patted his robe with disgust as he glanced angrily at the robust woman that seemed to be smitten with him. "Young master, I'm Tai Ruhua. Greetings." The robust woman put on the appearance of a shy young woman as she half-squatted and bowed to Du Fan. Her voice was extremely soft, yet it caused goosebumps to appear on the skin of others because of the hoarseness of her voice. The corners of Du Fan's mouth twitched as he used the fan in his hand to partially cover his mouth, and then he smiled and glanced at Wei Feng before he said to the woman, "So it's Miss Tai. May I know how this brother of mine offended Miss?" "Offended? No. But I want to invite these young masters to stay in my estate for a short period of time." As the woman spoke, her gaze that was suffused with an excited glow occasionally descended onto Du Fan before descending onto the nearby Wei Feng. "Humph. If you want a man, then why don't you go directly to the tavern? You want us. Are you even worthy?" Wei Feng laughed with ridicule, and he didn't conceal the disdain and detest on his face in the slightest. The robust woman's expression instantly went grim when she heard this, and she stared at Luo Yu as she revealed a strange smile. "Once you enter this city, there aren't many that can escape from my grasp. Not to mention all of you are people that are on the bounty board. Ha, do all of you think you can still leave?" As soon as she finished speaking, she raised her hand, and a group of armored guards surged in from outside and heavily surrounded the tavern. "Unrelated people, fuck off." When the people in the inn heard this, they didn't dare to stay for long. They quickly left the inn and watched from afar. Du Fan looked at the burly woman in front of him and gently waved the fan in his hand. "Miss, I advise you to leave as soon as possible. Otherwise, if my brothers fight, you won't be a match for them even if you have several times more people. I'll say it again. If you know what's good for you, follow me obediently. Otherwise, it'll be ugly if you're dragged along." The young woman stared at Wei Feng with an infatuated appearance as she said, "If such a handsome face is injured, my heart will ache greatly. You're courting death." Wei Feng's face sank. As soon as he finished speaking, the sharp sword in his hand flashed, and as his figure flashed out, a sword chi that was suffused with a cold glow assaulted the woman. Swish! Seeing the sword coming, the woman was not afraid. Her eyes were only filled with excitement. She quickly retreated. Her agility was beyond their expectations. Swish! The sword chi tore through the ground and left behind a mark on the ground, whereas, the woman had already avoided it and arrived outside to look at Du Fan and the others, and she spoke with a covetous tone. "Pretty boys, are all of you coming out? Or is it better if I go in?" Chapter 3709. No matter how nimble she is, we can still make her lie on the ground and unable to move. As Wei Feng spoke, the long sword in his hand pressed forward and attacked Tai Ruhua. When Tai Ruhua saw him flying over, she quickly retreated. At the same time, she took out two weapons with metal balls from her space. She combined the two weapons into one and directly met Wei Feng's attack. At the same time, she quickly counterattacked. Hui Lang and Luo Yu attacked the armored guards around them. The two of them were like Azuras harvesting lives. Everywhere they passed, the corpses fell to the ground. The smell of fresh blood assailed their noses and filled the air. The bloody scene caused the surrounding people to involuntarily suck in a breath of cold air. Hiss! They actually directly killed those armored guards. Those are the city lord's guards. They don't want to live anymore. Now that they've been targeted by Tai Ruhua, they won't be able to live even if they want to. Don't even mention being targeted by Tai Ruhua. They're people on the bounty list. I reckon that everyone wants to test their strength. I just didn't expect that these people would be so strong. Looking at the shadows of the swords flying through the air, the scene of slaughter was like hell. It caused people to involuntarily shiver. Feng Zhou, who was in the inn, frowned slightly when he heard the commotion outside. Noticing his master's displeasure, Leng Hua said, "Master, you should rest in the room first." Leng Hua indicated to Qin Xian and Bai Qingqing, telling them to leave as well. Only his sister stayed in the room to guard. After leaving, they set up a soundproof barrier to prevent the sound from coming in. "Do you want us to go out and take a look?" Bai Qingqing asked as she looked at the inn outside. "You two stay here and guard it. I think that it should be finished very quickly," Leng Hua said and told the two of them to guard outside the room. Only then did he walk downstairs. At this time, he saw a few people walk out from another room. "Leng Hua, you just need to protect Master. Leave the rest to us," Qi Kong walked out and said to Leng Hua. Then, he walked out with several people beside him. This time, other than the 8 leaders of the Phoenix Guards, the master only brought Leng Shuang, Leng Hua, Bai Qingqing, Qin Xian, Du Fan, and Hui Lang. Although there were only a dozen people, it was more than enough to protect the master, not to mention dealing with the people outside. Outside, the more Tai Ruhua fought, the more sweat beaded on her forehead. Seeing that all the people she had brought had been killed, and the other men were calmly leaning against the inn and watching, her face couldn't help but turn pale. Didn't they say that they were just people of unknown origins? How could each and every one of them be so powerful? If it weren't for her innate divine strength, she probably wouldn't have been able to hold on until now. Even so, the murderous intent of the other party's attacks made her heart turn cold. Even the initial trace of lust disappeared without a trace. At this time, she was only thinking about how to survive. However, at this moment, the sharp sword in the man's hand suddenly flashed out a sword flower, aiming directly at her face. She cried out in a low voice, "Aw!" She staggered backward. At that moment, she felt the aura of death enveloping her. But at that moment, a powerful force attacked her, dissipating the man's attack. Whoosh! Chapter 37:10. Big Brother. Tai Ruhua couldn't help but pounce forward happily when she saw the middle-aged man. "Big Brother. It's good that you've come. Big Brother, capture all of them. I'll take all of those men." The 4 old men glanced at each other when they heard this, and then they shook their heads and sighed silently. The city governor has no choice but to have such a younger sister. The middle-aged man had his hands behind his back, and his expression went cold as he looked at the corpses of the armored guards on the ground. He looked at Wei Feng and the others before him and said with a low voice, "All of you have the audacity to commit such a slaughter in our city and disregard the rules of our city as nothing. City rules." Du Fan walked out slowly and smiled as he looked at the middle-aged man. "So there are rules in this city. Forgive us for not knowing since we've just arrived. But we're only acting in self-defense." "Audacious! Quickly greet the city governor." An old man shouted, and at the same time that his fierce gaze swept out, a formidable pressure assaulted towards Du Fan. Du Fan's body hadn't recovered completely, so he was unable to endure the pressure. Wei Feng, who stood before him, blocked it right away, and then he raised the sword in his hand and attacked the middle-aged man. City rules. Let's properly experience what sort of city rules are. A sword strike that contained killing intent struck out swiftly, and it pressed down on the middle-aged man's vital point. The middle-aged man hadn't even made a move when the two old men at the side had already attacked him. 2 against 1. Wouldn't that be allowing all of you to take advantage of me? Luo Yu laughed with ridicule, and then he leaped out to join the battle right away. As soon as he attacked, he didn't hold back in the slightest, and his swift and fierce sword chi shot out and killed the old man with a single strike. Its speed was so swift that those people were unable to react in time. A.H. A shrill cry resounded out as a strand of blood sprayed out, and then a corpse fell to the ground along with it. When they saw the old man fall and was killed with a single strike, the hearts of the other 3 people and the middle-aged man shook abruptly. They gasped with disbelief as they staggered back, and they stared their eyes wide open as they looked at the man that held a sword in his hand. That sword strike and that pressure shook them to the point they were unable to speak, and they only knew that enormous waves surged within their hearts, causing them to be unable to calm down for a long time. You guys. At this moment, they finally reacted, and they finally knew fear. Because just a single strike of the sword had allowed them to realize that their opponent's strengths far surpassed them. Moreover, at this moment, the others who didn't emanate powerful auras had actually released their auras as well. Only at this moment did they realize that these people hadn't revealed their full strength since the beginning. Hiss! You actually killed the 3rd elder. Tai Ruhua cried out in surprise. She sucked in a breath of cold air and grabbed her brother's sleeve tightly. Brother! Arrest them! Arrest him! Shut up! The middle-aged man's expression changed greatly as he shouted angrily. He reached out and pushed her away. He stared at Luo Yu and the others and asked with a grave expression, "Who the hell are you people? Someone who can take your life." Luo Yu coldly snorted and bluntly said. As soon as he finished speaking, he pointed the sword in his hand at the middle-aged man and quickly moved forward. Chapter 37:11. Luo Yu, watch out! Du Fan shouted, and at the same time, he quickly retreated, only to see a silver net attack, from top to bottom, enveloping Luo Yu with a speed that was too fast for him to cover his ears. When Luo Yu brandished his sword to slash, he only heard a series of metallic clanging sounds. When the silver net fell, it quickly tightened and trapped Luo Yu inside. At this moment, Du Fan saw a flash of killing intent in the middle-aged man's eyes. He saw the man move his hand and a scimitar appeared in his hand. He fiercely stabbed at Luo Yu who was trapped in the silver net. Bang! Chi Kong rushed out and kicked the scimitar out of the middle-aged man's hand. At the same time, he struck out with his palm and sent the middle-aged man flying. He crashed heavily on the ground. Pfft! Governor! Brother! The middle-aged man spat out a mouthful of blood and his face instantly turned pale. He tried to stand up by supporting himself on the ground, but in the end, he fell back again. Until the 2 old men helped him up. Brother, are you all right? The woman shouted anxiously, but she didn't know where her brother was injured. She couldn't help but walk around in circles anxiously. However, before she could help him up, a cold sword was already pressed against her brother's throat. Young master, please spare my life. The old man beside her hurriedly begged for mercy and didn't dare to attack again. He looked at the man who was pointing at their governor and hurriedly said, "He is our governor. If he dies, the city will definitely be in chaos. Young master, please show mercy." However, Luo Yu coldly smiled in the face of the begging. "What does the chaos in your city have to do with us? Today, not only will he die, even you will die." As soon as he finished speaking, the sharp sword in his hand pierced through the city lord's throat. Blood oozed out, and the city lord couldn't even scream. He only let out a muffled groan. His eyes were wide open, as if he couldn't believe that they had killed him just like that. "Brother!" Tai Ruhua cried out in alarm. She looked at her brother who was killed and gritted her teeth. "I, Tai Ruhua, will definitely kill you." "Ah!" she shouted, and the weapon in her hand struck out. The heavy metal ball flew out at an extremely fast speed. Luo Yu dodged to the side, no longer concealing his strength. The sharp sword in his hand moved, the tip of the sword raised, and the cold sword instantly slit her throat. "Yes!" A muffled groan sounded out as Tai Ruhua's entire body fell to the ground. Even at the moment of death, her eyes were still opened wide as if she didn't dare believe that she'd been killed just like that. Luo Yu didn't show any mercy. Looking at the old man who was about to turn and flee, his ruthless and bloodthirsty nature kicked in and he finished off the old man as well. Luo Yu narrowed his eyes as he looked at the blood-soaked ground and the surrounding people who were watching the scene with stiff bodies. He coldly swept his gaze across the surroundings, and a voice that was filled with pressure spread out at this moment. "We have never been merciful to our enemies. Anyone who wants to be our enemy should be prepared to be killed." His voice was simple and straightforward, causing the unaffiliated cultivators, who had initially had some thoughts, to give up on them. Even the governor of this city had been instantly killed, so how could they be far away? They believed that if they really did make a move, they would probably become a corpse on the ground in the next moment just like the governor and the others. Chapter 37:12. The Castellan had been killed, but no one in the city dared to do anything. Even some of the clans in the city discussed it and felt that they should pay a visit to those people. Fengzhou didn't care about this matter and left it to his subordinates to deal with it. Now, other than nurturing the fetus, she was recuperating and cultivating. At the same time, she was taking care of Xianyuan Mo's in the space and reading some books and materials. She knew that if she wanted to wake Xianyuan Mo's up, she had to find the ancient golden lotus. Her green lotus could restrain the black lotus, and she had to research a kind of medicine that could remove the black lotus energy. However, she couldn't do any of these three things now, but she wouldn't give up. In the space, she helped Xianyuan Mo's move his muscles and bones while talking to him. She accompanied him in the space for a while before going to the side to cultivate. The next morning, the clans in the city came together. This wasn't a big city, and the clans in the city were only third-rate clans compared to the clans in other places. However, now that the Castellan had been killed, these small clans and forces in the city were ready to make a move. They wanted to pay a visit to those people and find out what kind of people they were. Secondly, they wanted to stabilize the situation in the city. Du Fan and the others were eating breakfast on the first floor when they saw 4 or 5 people outside the inn looking inside. They signaled to the waiter and the waiter went outside. Not long after, he came back to report to them. "Young master, the people outside are the clan heads of some clans in the city. They want to pay you a visit." Hearing this, Luo Yu and the others looked at each other and then looked at Du Fan. "Do you want to meet them?" Du Fan smiled and gently fanned himself with the fan in his hand. "There's no harm in meeting them." Thus, the waiter went outside to invite them in. Luo Yu and the others weren't interested in meeting the head of a third-rate family. They got up and prepared to go to the courtyard behind the inn to practice some martial arts to loosen up their muscles. Only Chi Kong stayed behind to accompany Du Fan to meet those people. After all, Du Fan's body hadn't fully recovered yet. Qi Naxian went to study medicine with Fan Lin. Only Leng Hua was guarding the door of Fengzhou's room upstairs. Bai Qingqing came out of the back kitchen with breakfast in her hands and went upstairs. When she saw those people come in, she just glanced at them and went upstairs. The 4 or 5 patriarchs walked in without bringing anyone else with them. When they saw the beautiful woman in white, they couldn't help but be stunned. They took another look at her until she went upstairs. Then, they bowed to the 2 men who were sitting there. "Greetings, young masters." They cupped their hands and said. At the same time, their attention fell on the 2 men, secretly sizing them up. they couldn't help but be on full alert. No wonder the city lord's sister, Tai Ruhua, liked them. Not to mention the people who left earlier, just the two men sitting here were equally outstanding, but their temperaments were completely different. Speak. What do you want from us? Du Fan fanned himself with the fan in his hand and asked slowly. There was a smile on his face, which made people who didn't know him feel that he didn't look so scary. Instead, he looked quite approachable. Chapter 37:13. Hearing this, Chi Kong and Du Fan looked at each other. The former didn't say anything, while the latter smiled. Oh. You know. Yes. As they spoke, they took out a piece of paper with the names of the people and their clans and handed it over. It's these clans. As for the reason, we don't know. Du Fan and Chi Kong weren't surprised by this. They took the paper and glanced at it. Du Fan asked, "You came here to tell us this? Aren't you afraid that they'll do something to you if they find out? We're not the only ones who know about this. They didn't even try to hide it. Even if we didn't say anything, you young masters would know if you asked around. We came here to tell you this because we want you to know that we don't agree with what the city lord did. Furthermore, the city lord has been killed by you young masters. We want to. What do you want to do?" Du Fan asked with a smile. His expression was amiable. Just say it. Seeing that he was so easy to talk to, the anxious hearts of the few people gradually relaxed. They explained the purpose of their visit. "We want to choose one of our clans to be the city lord. We hope that the few young masters can lend us a hand." Hearing this, Du Fan's gaze swept past them. His gaze landed on a middle-aged man. "You're the strongest among all of you. I think your clan's background is better than theirs. If we were to choose one of you, you have the right to try." But when the middle-aged man heard that he had the right, he couldn't help but be delighted. However, he paused and couldn't help but ask, "Young master, but what?" Du Fan smiled and closed the fan in his hand. "But I don't know what your character is like. If you have the same character as the previous city lord, then it won't be good. Don't worry, young master. Although this city can't be compared to other big cities, and our clans can't be compared to the clans of other big cities, we won't run amok like those people. Today, we came to visit you because there are other forces eyeing the city lord, so we want to ask for your help. I can assure you, young master, that if I become the city lord, I will not act as recklessly as the previous city lord." The middle-aged man hurriedly promised. "Who are the other forces you mentioned?" Du Fan asked. Hearing this, they were delighted and hurriedly told them about the other two evil forces in the city. Afterwards, they looked at them expectantly. "You guys go back first. If we think you're suitable to be the city lord, we'll help you solve your problems before we leave. If we don't think you're suitable, we won't interfere in this matter." Du Fan gestured for them to leave first. Hearing this, they looked at each other. Although they didn't know what decision they would make, they still left first. After they left, Chi Kong looked at Du Fan and asked, "Do you really plan to help them? It can't be considered as helping them, but helping the citizens of this city."